Hey everybody and welcome to a new One Piece video. Finally the episode that kicks off Luffy versus Kizaru. And literally, let's break down this episode and its stuff because there's a lot of promising new talent behind it. There was a lot of guesses floating around about the director, but it ended up being someone new, Yasushi Tomoda. They previously directed Elusive Samurai episode 7 and honestly, I'm pleasantly surprised with their work. It's not mind-blowing, there's a lot of basic bits, but there are definitely moments of ambitious direction and storyboarding that caught my eye. But just like last week, I'm not sure if they're a freelance director or someone newly added to the team. But let's now dive into the good and bad, starting with the good. First off, the use of soundtrack was great across the episode, but I especially liked how it was abruptly cut off when Luffy interrupted Kizaru. It reminded me of the epicness of Shishido's direction back in episode 1100 when Luffy blitzed Lucci. Another solid moment was Lucci's attack. It had great use of negative space and once again no soundtrack, selling the serious atmosphere, letting the action speak for itself. The tone during the flashback and the aftermath of Kizaru defeating Sentomaru was also handled very well. Storyboard wise, there were some nice ambitious touches like the point of view shot of Sentomaru running for his axe or Kizaru flying up towards the Straw Hats with great scale. Now here's where I had some issues. Pacing felt dragged during Zoro and Lucci clash, and there were too many reaction shots in fast-paced scenes, like when Sanji captured Kaku. There's a big difference between quick action and reaction leading to action. That moment just didn't have that cool Sanji flair it had in the manga. And I know talking about Sanji in the anime nowadays is a big thing, but I'll be dedicating a video for that. But don't associate me with some of these toxic Sanji fans harassing staff. Another thing is the transition into the Kizaru Sentomaru flashback. It felt jarring and sudden. The flashback itself was good, but the way it started was just out of nowhere. So yeah, pacing and flow were the biggest issues for me here. But overall, solid work and nothing here felt significantly harmful to the episode. Now let's get into the meat of the episode, the animation and action storyboards. Naoto Shishida continues to prove how insanely valuable he is to One Piece. He handled nearly 3 minutes of animation by himself, featuring multiple scenes and characters, even complex ones like the sea beasts. He's known for having a lot of freedom in his storyboards, so we saw some classic Shida trademarks here. He animated both the Zoro vs Lucci clash and the early parts involving the sea beasts and vice admirals. And despite that, he's also back for next week. He's been carrying a lot already on his back. We also had Yu Yoshiyama animating Lucci attacking Stussy. She's a fantastic animator who's done a lot for One Piece, but is best known for her wild work on Precure series. Her artwork on Lucci looked amazing, though by her standards, this was relatively modest. Then there's an animator called Rama, fan animator making their debut, and they absolutely crushed it here. It's rare for someone to leave such a strong impression right off the gate. Their effects work stood out, and their timing was super unique and satisfying. I especially loved the cut where Sentomaru turns into a smear for an extended bit of time. It gave Zoro vs King flashback. We need more of this technique in One Piece, or animation in general. Next up is the prodigy Anikari, one of the youngest animators in the industry, already reaching insane heights. This time he even did his own storyboard, heavily inspired by Yutaka Nakamura's work on My Hero Academia. Anikari worked on both Galaxy Impact and Galaxy Divide with Shizuka, but now he's interested with his own sequel and storyboard, which is huge. He is responsible for that close-up of Kizaru that had everyone hyped from the early previews. The volume, the consistency, the art, just amazing stuff. It's probably the most intimidating Kizaru has ever looked, in my opinion. The entire sequence had amazing weight, timing, effects, and background animation. It sold Kizaru's power perfectly. This was easily the highlight of the episode for me, production-wise, and Ikari's future is insanely bright. And now, the start of the madness. Luffy vs Kizaru. The storyboard was done by Katsumi Ishizuka, who also handled animation supervision here. Now there's not much you can do with just one kick, and this is definitely more tamed compared to what Ishizuka usually brings, but it's also refreshing to see him working on something more grounded instead of earth-shattering attacks. Even with simplicity, Ishizuka still gave the scene scale and impact. Good emphasis on backgrounds being huge and characters being small. And of course, the animator here was Chris. This duo has delivered historic stuff before. The kick had incredible effects and a strong sense of speed through use of smears and exaggeration, with a lot of spins leading up to it, and Luffy turning into a dot, which is classic stuff we've seen from this team and Nakamura himself. The slow motion cut and to be continued at the end were the icing on the cake, and Luffy looked insanely badass. If I had to nitpick here, I would have preferred less time from Luffy until he reached Kizaru, but aside from that, perfect. Especially with the photography work by Ishizu, he gave the moment a badass vibe. The only downside is the previews spoiling too much of this, almost showing the whole thing. Kinda killed the hype, or some of it. There's also a nice cut of Luffy jumping off the ship. I really liked seeing more animators following Mori's approach, and a bunch of other cool scenes throughout, like Nightberry's cuts, especially his uncorrected Vegapunk. I would like to see him getting a bit more freedom, like here. And there was also some strong stuff with Sentomaru sprinkled in throughout the episode. Overall, I'm very satisfied with this episode. Next week's preview looks pretty tame, aside from Shida, and unfortunately some very rough bits involving Akainu and Kuma, like extremely rough. But hopefully it's just a misleading preview and the final product delivers. Big expectations for the Gear 5 stuff, especially since a lot of big names are still absent. Thanks a lot for watching, like and subscribe. See you next time.